A couple of things I've learned. One of the things I've learned is that there is, I'm not sure anything more beautiful or powerful that I've ever seen in my life than courageous love. Another thing that I've learned is that you don't get an engraved invitation to join a movement for change. You just got to make a decision to do it. And you got to keep making that decision over and over and over again, even when people tell you you shouldn't be making that decision. Now, I met these two women one night at the end of September. Reverend Sekou, who you saw in that video, had called a bunch of us because they'd been out there in front of the Ferguson Police Department nonviolently protesting every night. And the times the clergy showed up, things went okay. And the times the clergy didn't show up, things went really, really badly. And he said, look, if you're going to say you're going to be for these people, you got to get out there and have their backs. And so we came. And I'd never met these two women here. And I was absolutely blown away. Because what I saw were women of power, women of vision, women who had something in their heart that they were not going to let go of. And I was in awe. You know, sometimes they say, well, I don't know what something is, but I know it when I see it. And I say that about leadership. I can't necessarily always say, yeah, here are the 6 qualities of leadership. But I know leadership when I see it, and I saw it that night, and I have seen it ever since. Now, what is happening here around us, we are at the epicenter of really not even just a national, but a global movement. And right here is the epicenter. And what happens in these moments of history, as I said, they don't come with engraved invitations. They come with a sense of call. And they take people who are extraordinary enough to rise up and to seize that call and to answer it. And by the way, to put aside all the other stuff they've been working on in their lives at that point to do that. And that's what I've seen in Brittany and Alexis. And so, what I want to introduce you to is these two women who are really the leaders of this movement. Rob talks to them about how this has been a movement of the young. This has also been a movement of women. You look at the people who are leading this movement. It's not older guys like me. You go and watch the movie Selma. How many of you seen the movie Selma? Go see it if you haven't seen it. But what Selma will concentrate on is the story of the men. And that's because in the last civil rights movement, the women were told to stay back. Well, in this civil rights movement, the women aren't listening and they're not waiting. They're standing up and they're answering the call and they're leading. And so, it's my honor to introduce to you Brittany, Ferrell, and Alexis Templeton, who have founded Millennial Activists United, and who are your leaders in this movement. So please give them a hand.
How y'all doing? I can't sit down. My name's Alexis. I'm 20 years old. I don't know how many of you are senior. 21. My birthday was yesterday. I'm 21 years old. And, you know, I don't know how many of you are seniors in high school, freshman year of college, freshman in college. But I was a sophomore. Technically, I was a sophomore, but I was kind of still a freshman. Anyway, and I dropped out of school because on August 9th, a boy lay in the street for 4.5 hours. And the community, including his parents and his stepfather, watched him bleed out. And the police had no explanation for it. Their explanation for letting that young man bleed out was to bring riot gear and dogs to where people in the community were just trying to see what was going on. And so that was my call to be out there. What kept me in this movement, well, actually on August 9th, I was in Phoenix. I have to get a background. On August 9th, I was in Phoenix visiting family. I wake up, you know, like everybody else, we grab our phones, right? I grab my phone, I'm looking on Twitter, and my childhood friend who actually, like, looked outside his window and saw Mike Brown laying on the ground because he stays in Canfield, took a picture and was like, Ferguson police just murdered this boy, somebody called the news, right? Don't call any other police department, call the news. Anyway, so I'm like, wow, that's crazy, you know, but in St. Louis, it generally happens, like, man, that sucks. You just keep scrolling, right? So that's what I did. But within a couple hours, the entire area of St. Louis caught on. People were coming from the city to come to Ferguson to see what was going on. People were coming from West County to see what was going on, just to come to Ferguson and see what had happened to this young man, but something just didn't feel right. So I started to pay attention, and then I watched the city. What a lot of people saw, I was watching from Twitter and I was watching from the news, is, you know, people were getting attacked, not by citizens, people were getting attacked by police officers. People were getting attacked by law enforcement. People were getting pepper sprayed and rubber bulleted and tear gassed. And I'm like, because they wanted to protest about the death of a young man, are you serious? I'm like, man, I gotta get home. So I come home 5 days later, and I hit the ground, and I haven't left since. It's what, almost 200 days now? We on month 3. I know we're on month 3. Oh, never mind, 6 months. Anyway, I'm bad at math. So, anyway, what kept me in this movement was on July 6, 2013, I was in a car accident. My fiance was in the car, my dad was in the car, my uncle was in the car, and I was in the car. My dad crashed the car and he killed everybody except me. So, for a year I went through depression, trying to kill myself, just a whole bunch of load of things. I was basically just walking through life, and I was just like existing. I wasn't living. I was just here, going through the movements, going to class, not doing too well in school, but I was there, so that's all that mattered. You know, different things like that. Very suicidal, very depressed. But then I get out one day, and somebody hands me a bullhorn at one of these protests. Not even a protest, just being out here. Somebody hands me a bullhorn, and they're like, chant. I'm like, all right. So I lead chants, and I got to put a year of depression, a year of anger, a year of hurt, a year of pain into these chants. And people, you know, like Mike Kimmin, felt it, and it felt good. And so I want to take a moment to say that Mike Brown saved my life. And it's ironic that it had to happen. It sucks that it had to happen the way that it did. But he literally is the reason that I'm able to stand here and talk to y'all every day. Without him, I would have killed myself. And so that's why I'm here, and that's what's kept me here, and that's the reason I'm still here, is because he saved my life. And I feel like I owe him that. I owe him and every young black life taken by vigilante or police officer every 28 hours. I owe him my life to be out here. And to risk it every single day. So, anyway, I was a normal kid. I like to eat, listen to music, and cuddle up with my dog. And now I can't do that anymore. So, I just want to let everybody know that I was normal, just like you. And now, here we are. I don't have my dog anymore because I was so involved in the protest that my grandma gave my dog away. And I don't really listen to music anymore because I listen to a lot of rap. And because my favorite hip hop artists either weren't saying anything about what was going on, or they were saying things, but they were saying things like, people just need to respect themselves and the police won't kill us. And I'm like, what? Okay. So I can't listen to music anymore. And music was like my everything. And I haven't picked up headphones, and I can't even tell you how long. So my life is completely different now. Anything else I need to touch on? Anyway, sorry, she's my backbone. So yeah, so I just wanted to say that I was normal. So that's why I was here.
Hi, my name's Brittany, and I'm a senior nursing student down at Umsel, down the street. I was supposed to graduate this May, but because I dropped out of school because of Ferguson last semester, I now graduate in December. So just to give you all some background on myself, most of my teenage years were spent with me self-educating on why, to me, I mean, I couldn't wrap my head around the fact of why is it that no matter where you go, when you go into communities of color, they tend to be a lot worse off than every other community that you visit. I was always, and being like a science nerd, being someone that's really into food justice and being someone that's really into just health, the health field itself has a ton of different disparities that can be addressed. But I would find myself just like going to a grocery store in whatever area of the city I'm in, and then I'm like, oh, this is crap compared to going to grocery stores that I had the privilege of going to. I would find myself going to working in the hospital and seeing how people of color with, let's say, state insurance, or let's say they had insurance provided by their companies, were treated differently, or assumed to not have insurance at all, and they were treated differently. So most of my teenage years I spent self-educating and trying to figure out this disparity that people of color dealt with in this country. It wasn't until as of recently when I started looking into issues such as police violence and the ratio of people being driving while black, or walking while black, stop and frisk in New York City, pedestrian checks all over America. I began to wonder, why is this? Why can't black people be seen for their humanity rather than their color, right? So I was, when Mike Brown had got killed, I had just got back to America. I had went to Amsterdam and Paris for 2 weeks. Came home, and some of my friends from school were all like, let's go to New York. I'm like, okay, I got 3 more weeks to spare before school starts back. Let's go to New York. So I'm in New York. I just checked into my hotel room. They're like, let's go kayaking on the Hudson River. I'm like, okay, cool, let's do it. I've never kayaked before. So I'm kayaking on the Hudson River, and then I get out of the kayak boat, and I get back on the dock, and then I check Twitter, and then I see that this kid is dead on the street. And I'm like, wait a minute. Like, he was shot by another person, like another civilian, or, he was shot by who? I didn't get it at first. It was just like, okay, the kid laying dead in the street. Similar to what Alexis said, your first thing would be to scroll past it. It's like, okay, details coming later, I'll just wait and see what happens. Get on Twitter later that night, later that evening, and the kid is still laying there. And then I find out that he was shot by a police officer, and the ambulance was not called, and they did not handle the investigation properly. And I'm like, wait a minute. This is a police shooting of an 18-year-old kid. Then I'm thinking about how, was it summer before that, we were looking at the Trayvon Martin trial. And just a few months before that, I had put together a panel discussion on police brutality and violence in the black community. And then that made me reflect on Oscar Grant and Troy Davis. And it made me reflect on all of the other lives that have been taken. And automatically my first assumption was, what's going to suck is that they're not going to give this kid's family justice. So, for the rest of my trip, I could not enjoy it. I was sick. I was glued to my phone. I could not engage with the people that I went to New York with. Although they were also people of color, they were Iranian, and they didn't quite understand my experience that I was dealing with at that moment. I felt like I was in this bubble, and I was trying to engage them in conversation as to what was really bothering me. And as I had this conversation with them, I was like, it's frustrating because we already know how it's going to go. We don't have a fair shot with the system. I'm going to get home, and no one's going to see this situation for what what it is. They're going to want to make excuses for why it happened the way that it did. They didn't get it. That was when I realized that the experience that I was having was not an experience that, the experience was unique to me. The experience was unique to other people that look just like me. Existing being black is not just a thing, it's an experience. And it's an experience because of the way that things are set up. And I got home on August 12th at 11 o'clock at night. I got home, I checked Twitter, and I saw the police in this community with dogs. I saw a Vine video of a police officer calling the protesters effing animals. I saw tear gas, military vehicles. I saw wounds from rubber bullets. But I also saw a community show up in a way that I've never seen it show up before. Because I felt like this is it, and enough is enough. And if no one wants to acknowledge the racism that has been growing in this city for years, they're going to acknowledge it now. Because it's always been here, you know? Just because you don't experience it does not mean that it does not exist. And that's the thing. So many people don't experience it, so they don't acknowledge it. So many people don't have to worry about what comes with living in a certain skin, or what comes with living with a certain circumstance, your environment. You don't have to experience what comes with it, but that does not mean that it does not exist. It is a whole life, a whole subgroup of human beings that are treated unfairly simply because of the way that they look. And what I saw that day was the police treating black people like they were 3/5 of a person. And immediately took me back to photos of when cops used to stand face to face with demonstrators back in the 60s, when they would pull their dogs out on demonstrators. The only thing that was not happening to people in August was that we were not being hosed. But you could have fooled me when I looked at those photos, because I would have, if I would not have known any better, I would have thought that they were taking the same tactics that they used in the 60s during the Civil Rights era and using them right now. I got in town, I hit the ground immediately, I took my daughter with me. Early August, she stayed on my back a lot of times. She was on my back while I was at protests. She was on my back just until the sun started to go down, because that's usually when the cops like to start tear gassing. And my daughter has asthma, so she doesn't need to be out there. But during the daytime, she spent a lot of time on my back while I was protesting. She needed to see this because this is her history. This is the black experience. This is what we go through as being people of color in America, and she needed to see what we're going through now is the same exact thing that those that came before us went through then. And not much has changed. It's been 50 years since the Civil Rights era. 50 years. And while we have a lot more opportunity than we did then, the new thing now is shooting and killing people of color and their families not receiving justice in a country that was founded on accountability and justice. So, nightfall, I was still out there, a lot of times by myself. But I felt like if the story was going to be told, it needed to be told correctly. The media wasn't doing their job, so we could take regular people that were willing to sacrifice everything that they had to tell the story of what was happening in this community. There were nights when I would walk down the street and the streets would be barricaded with cement blocks. So the people that live in these neighborhoods, if they had an emergency, how were they to leave? There were people who were tear gassed and I was trying to treat them with milk, with Maalox. And then they'll see me treating them and they'll come shoot tear gas canisters at me too. So it was a lot that I saw, but nothing really turned me away from going out there. And so fast forward to today, it's 6 months later, just about. And we're still here, we're still doing work, and we're going to continue to do work and continue to organize people, because this is not something that's just going to come to a halt because people are uncomfortable or because people of power put things into place to try to deter people from standing on the right side of justice. So we're here and we're going to continue to be here and we're going to continue to do this work because there are a number of issues that have, aside from police brutality, a number of issues such as the 93 municipalities that exist in this city that profit off of the backs of poor people. It's a number of issues that have surfaced, and this is the opportunity to make this city and the world, if you have not been following, the world has caught on to this movement. It's the opportunity to make it a better place for all people.
So she kind of spoke on what she's seen and things she's experienced. So I guess I'm gonna jump right into that. The most memorable night, and it's all funny because it all sucks, but the most memorable night is we were on. There was a young man who was murdered on the south side of St. Louis, Shaw. His name is Gary Myers. He was 18 years old and he was gunned down by an off-duty police officer. Technically, he was a security guard, but he was gunned down by an off-duty police officer. It was said he had a gun. It was said he popped out of the bushes, and then when he went to the scene, there were no bushes. So then it was said that he had a gun, but the people he was with were like, no, he didn't have a gun. What are you talking about? But anyway, his killer was let off. So we were doing protests on Shaw, on the south side. We were on Arsenal and Grand that night. And what happened was we marched from Shaw all the way to Arsenal and Grand. I don't know why. It was the longest walk ever. Adrenaline gets rushing. You don't know where you're going. People just marching and you march with them. And I don't know. We didn't think that was through. Anyway, we marched through the walk. And we ended up on Arsenal and Grand. And there's a spot called Millenial, which is right at that corner. And on the other end of that street is a Qdoba, there's an AT&T store, there's a Gridco, and there's a FedEx, right? So we happened to be on the other side. And what happened was the march got split up. So two separate groups of people got split up. So people were on the side by Mocha Bees and Tower Grove Park. And then we were on, me and Brittany and a few other people got kettled in over by the Qdoba, on the side of the Qdoba. So what happened was the police, we were on the sidewalk. And the police officer rolled up in the middle of the street, got out of his car, did not assess the situation or what was going on, and just immediately started spraying mace. And when he did it, all the other police officers were like, oh, we spraying mace? Cool. So everybody started spraying mace. So people just started running in our directions because they're getting mace. People were choking. One guy had a seizure. Well, he didn't have a seizure, but he had like a reaction to the mace, to this pepper spray. So he's like flipping out, crying, shaking on the ground. It was crazy. But he ended up going to the hospital. You had people taking pictures like, you can mace me, but I'm still going to be here, blah, blah, blah. I didn't really get maced, but you could smell it, and I have asthma, so I try to run as far away as I can when tear gas and things like that come, because I don't want to die. So they wouldn't let us, the kids, our kids. So they didn't want to let us get to the other side with the other protesters, so they kettled us in. So they're standing right where the intersection is, so we can't cross the street, and we're like facing them, and they won't let us move. They're right there. They have the baton things in their shields, and they were holding them on tight. They're tapping them on the ground, trying to intimidate us, and we're just like, okay. So what happened was we started chanting, but we didn't start chanting, well, first, let me go back. We were talking to the police officers, and we're like, we're human. Brittany does this thing when she's like, I'm a nurse. I'm supposed to be a nurse. I'm going to be a registered nurse, and I'm more likely to save your child's life one day. I'm likely to save your child's life one day, and you'll stand here and you'll take mine. You'll stand here and you'll take my daughter's life because we're black. But I'll likely save your child's life. And that's how she humanizes, how she has to, it's such she has to. That's how she humanizes herself out there. So she's talking to them. So I get this idea, I'm like, we should call our moms and put them on the bullhorn and have them talk to the cops. And have them tell the cops how much they value our lives. So she calls her mom first. And she's like, Mom, can you tell the police that you value my life? And that you love me, and that you care about me, that you don't want them to kill me or beat me tonight? And so she does. And then she's like, Mom, can you tell them why you moved my 18-year-old brother out of here and down to New Mexico as soon as you could when Mike Brown was murdered? And her mom was like, that he could be next. You know what I'm saying? So she's talking to the cops, and then as she's talking to her mom, you can see the cops starting to loosen up. They start to, one guy had his riot shield like this, and eventually he put it down on the ground and he just let it sit. And then I called my mom. She wasn't too happy about this. But I called her. And I'm like, Mom. I called my grandma first and she didn't answer. But I'm like, man, that sucks. But I called my mom. I'm like, Mom, can you tell the cops how much you value my life? And she's like, I value your life very much. And she's like, can you tell them that you love me? She's like, I love my daughter. Don't kill her. Don't beat her. It'd be nice if she made it home. Even though I think she's an idiot. I like her to make it home. And she's like, and I'm like, okay, tell them you don't want them to kill me or beat me. And she did. So we got off the phone, and you see cops just starting to loosen up. And so finally, they still won't let us through. I don't know why, but they still won't let us through. So we start chanting, and we do this chant, and it's from a side of Shakur. And it is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains. So we chanted that chant at least 50 times to the cops, and it was crazy because they all just started to loosen up. They all started to loosen up and back off and chill out a bit. And they saw that these people that they have maced, these people that they're kettling in, these people that they don't want to let through to get to the other side, to actually get back to their cars and go home because we had walked really far. We was trying to get back. That we're human. And that we're not bad protesters, and that we're just here to protest and peacefully, and because it's our right to do so. And eventually, they came and we made a deal and they let us through. Eventually, we went home, but that was the most memorable night. And it's interesting because we all got up one afternoon around 12:36 is when he was murdered. Everybody got up around about 1 o'clock off their couches on August 9th, and they went outside because somebody had been murdered. And what kept a lot of people outside was the fact that they were reminded by people who were paid to protect them that they are not allowed to be outside, that they are not allowed to stand on the sidewalk for more than 5 seconds. They were told to keep moving when they would stand for more than 5 seconds. And that's what kept people there. The fact that the police were telling them, you don't have a right to be here. And they're like, wait a second, hold up, let me pull up the Constitution. I didn't go through government class that long, but you know what I'm saying? The police are like, no. I remember being on West Florissant, and the man said, we didn't have the right to assemble. I'm like, the Constitution says we have the right to assemble. He's like, but Missouri's Constitution, this is a police officer. The Missouri Constitution says you don't have the right to assemble. Jay Nixon just passed a law that said you don't have the right to assemble. I'm like, but the federal Constitution trumps the state Constitution, so technically we can stand here, but whatever. But what was weird about that was there were so many people out there who didn't know their rights. Because the clergy, before Mike Kippen came out there, he's a great guy. Before some clergy with some saints came out there, the clergy that was there was like, yeah, just march in circles. And we're like, why would you have them march? Because the point was to make you keep marching, to make you tired so that you would go home. That was the trick. They were going to let you march, and then you had to go home because you were going to be tired. You didn't want to stand out in that heat. St. Louis gets hot. They don't want you to stand out in that heat and march all day. You get tired, you go home. But if you stood there, you could stay longer. So they're like, no, you have to keep moving. You don't have the right to assemble. If you want to assemble, you have to assemble up the street. You have to assemble in the assembly area. The right to assemble area is up there. Like, this is the, okay. But the clergy had the people marching in circles, and I'm like, stop making them do that. You know, this is their right. It's their right to stay here. These people live here. These people stay on Canfield. They pay for the street. Let them stay here. They pay taxes to stand right here. They can stand here. And the police officer, because he has got so much of the crowd to just march in circles, he felt like he accomplished his job. So he just walked away. And they laugh at you, and they point at you, and they make fun of you because they can get you to do anything they want you to do. Or they feel that they can do anything to you, and it wasn't matter. When I got arrested the second time, I asked to, excuse my language, but I asked to make a phone call. I said I wanted my one phone call. And the officer looked at me and said, fuck your phone call. I was like, oh, okay, cool. I said, what's my right, to make a phone call? She said, here you don't have any rights. You don't have any rights. And I was like, whatever. I argued a little bit. She put me in a cell by myself until it's time for me to go. It sucked. I had nobody to talk to. But whatever. So I'm sorry. I rambled. But what kept a lot of people out there was the fact that we were told that we didn't have any rights. We were constantly shown every night, and we were still shown. Every time we have an action, or every time we go to a protest, or every time we go stand out on the sidewalk to protest and police show up in riot gear, or they show up at all, is the fact that we're shown that we don't have rights. We're shown that we don't have the right to stand here, and it's not because it's because we're black. Majority of the time it was black people. The one night where, I don't know if he was there, but there was, we actually had white people come out to the Ferguson Police Department.
It was a White Solidarity March.
It was called the White Solidarity March, and they had organized for white people to come and stand in front of the Ferguson Police Department, had the black people stand at the very back of the Andy Worm lot, and the white people get in the street and take the street. The white people lock arms and don't move. The white people bang on the drums and the pots and pans and make a whole bunch of racket, and the black people don't do anything to stand in the back. Of course, the black people always stand in the back. That's not the point. The point is, the white people were in the street. They had done the march. They were leading the march. And when they got arrested, it was, the police usually come up and they throw you on the ground. I'm like, come on, take you to the back. When they were arresting the white people, grab them. How you doing? Come on. You understand? Some of them didn't even get put in zip ties. They just grabbed them and walked, come on, man, just walked them to the back and things like that. And they were out within a couple hours. I think we were still out there when they were headed back to the Ferguson Police Department from St. Anne. And when we got arrested, 15 hours, had to put on an orange jumpsuit, had to take mug shots, had to get my fingerprints taken, such and such, and blase, blase. But it was just interesting. It's always interesting to see the color differences, how the white people were treated differently when they get arrested. This is happening right in front of my face, right? And I'm like, this is 2014, it's 2015 now. I'm like, it's 2014, this is America. This is America. And they're constantly showing me that because of the color of my skin, I can get arrested differently. I can get served, they would follow you home after the protest. You'd get in your car and the police car would follow you home. Fun times. The National Guard followed me when they were here. Me and Brittany went to Target. We pull up in a parking spot area to go in. Didn't want to protest, just go to Target like normal people, right? The National Guard pulls up right next to us and just parks and just sits there. And when we came out, they were still sitting there. And so when we were leaving, we went to the trunk and we got signed and we pulled them out. He said, in white privilege or something like that, Black Lives Matter. She stood in front of the National Guard on the truck and was like, Black Lives Matter. But anyway, what else have I seen? Oh, the night I was arrested, 13 of us were arrested right after the Ferguson Police Department. We're standing on the sidewalk and we're chanting, show me what democracy looks like. Constantly, people respond to that, this is what democracy looks like. Before you know it, there's a big line of officers that comes out of the parking lot of the police department, marching just like this. And they come and they start trying to push us into the street. We're chanting, show me what democracy looks like, this is what democracy looks like. They start pushing us into the street, trying to arrest us, and they're like, stop resisting arrest, and we all have our hands up, we're not resisting. Just leave us alone, we're not doing anything, all we're doing is chanting, blah, 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 blah. We've been arrested, we all get put in the St. Anne for 15 hours. I had a bond of $1,500. How much? Oh, I do? I got some talking? My bad, I talk a lot. I had a bond of $1,500. Yeah, it sucked. But all because I was standing on the sidewalk and I was chanting against, something, the actions of police officers. How do you want to wrap this up?
I had a question for you guys. So something that was coming up a lot in our conversations was this idea of two sides. Like, there's people who are pro-police and people who are protesting. So I guess there's this sort of message out there sometimes that the protesters hate police and that they're against police, or that the black protesters hate the white police. How would you guys answer that or respond to that?
I would say that because, within the past 6 months, what I've seen, I can't recall the last time I've seen a good police officer. What I can say is that I can respect officers that do their jobs without terrorizing the communities that they serve. I don't hate police officers, but I hate police brutality. I hate racially biased police officers. I hate when people cannot recognize their implicit bias. I hate anything that's unjust and unequal. That's what I hate. I don't hate police officers. It's hard to express the respect that I have for officers in their line of work when every time you encounter them, it's for a ticket citation, stories of a stop and frisk or a pedestrian check, them in riot gear, or them, what I like to call physically assaulting me because I'm 5'2" and always unarmed, and there's no reason to rough me up, ever. That's what I do not like. But I cannot say that I hate police officers. I would just actually like to see some good ones.
So I think
To let people know that this is the marginalized. This is what's often ignored. So let's just reaffirm that these lives matter too.
I really think it's interesting that we can say that 50 years ago, I saw something a couple days ago, it's just so powerful in such an awful, great but awful way, just how amazing that was. But it's interesting to say that that was 50 years ago, and if my math is right, 100 years before that was the Emancipation Proclamation. Just like how it seems as though how little progress we've really made. It's really just awful. And so a couple days ago, I think it was yesterday, we went to the Disney store to try and buy Tiana from Princess and the Frog doll. There was one in the entire store. Like huge, gigantic shelf of Disney princess dolls. They have at least 20 from every movie, including like the ugly old witch from Brave. They had dolls like Barbie dolls of the ugly old witch from Brave. And one Tiana doll, very bottom, behind everything else. One Tiana. And just stuff like that. We were looking for even like a fair montage, not really montage, but a fair mixture of like maybe Mulan and Tiana and Cinderella and just a fair, even mix. And there wasn't one.
Yeah.
And it's just such a shock to see how that's really not. That's just kind of ingrained in society.
How many people know what white supremacy is? Okay. What is white anyone know what that looks like?
That's one.
That was a great example right there. But any other examples of what white supremacy looks like?
Wouldn't it be sort of like segregation, like whites are, let's say, like, okay, whites are important, and then you just push blacks aside, right? Wouldn't that kind of be what whites
I
like?
think that stems from white supremacy. Yeah, segregation definitely comes from white supremacy.
Is it when you think you're better because of the color of your skin?
That's an ideology that comes along with white supremacy. Yeah.
Like, what's the actual
White supremacy is when whiteness, Eurocentric ideologies, the conception, anything that's connected to or of whiteness, it's deemed superior than all other things. And when something is other than white, it's not as pure or as valued or as accepted as what is under that umbrella of white supremacy is. Now, the dolls is a great example. I am raising a little black girl, and I have already wrote a letter to Target because every year I go in there, they don't have black.
Yeah, we went to Target and there was nothing. We went to the Disney store and there was
Yeah, but that is only acceptable because of white supremacy. How enraged would people be if they went to the Disney store and there were a slew of Pocahontas dolls and Tianas and 5 Cinderellas? Everyone would be so angry.
people would think they were trying too hard or something.
They'd be like, why are you guys going to try so hard to make people of color feel comfortable? They've been here for 50 years. God, they should get over it by now. Like, honestly, like, seriously. And white supremacy, and I love using this example because I experienced it so much. In my cohort, there are 79 students. 7 of them are of African descent. I'm one of 7. 3 of them are from Nigeria. The other 4 are African American. When we talk about health disparities that are affecting communities of color, we spend 20 minutes, 20 minutes talking about, right now I'm in like pediatric and obstetrics and maternal care. And we have to cover, in a city like St. Louis with the demographic here, when we talk about cultural competence in the healthcare field, as a medical provider, you have to be culturally competent. You have to. It's not like being a police officer. You have to know how to deal with different cultures, what to expect, the mortality rate for children of color. But we breeze over that. We breeze over it because it's like, yeah, African American children have a high mortality rate and they have asthma and asthma's type eczema and they have this and they have that. But about this Crohn's disease, and it's like, really, we need to spend more time on this. We need to make sure that our nurses are also as educated culturally as they are clinically. It's important. Because you hear a lot of just stuff people say on the floors in hospitals that will make you ask, like, what the heck? Like, why are they here? Especially somewhere like Barnes that's in the inner city. Why are they here? That's white supremacy. When I have to be concerned about how I wear my hair to work, because naturally, by being a person of African descent, my hair does not flow down to my shoulders. That's white supremacy. When you can't have a group of black boys running down the street like you have a group of white boys running down the street, that's white supremacy. It's this belief of this supremeness that you have by being white. And that's a great example. And you can add that on the list of things that I hate. I hate white supremacy. I hate it.
I went into the Disney store to actually buy my stepdaughter a Tiana doll. And I found a Tiana doll, but I wanted to get her an actual costume. And I went and I looked in the little castle. There's a castle in the Disney store. And I went to look for like a Tiana like dress, and I could not find one. I could not find. The only thing I could find actually was a plush Tiana doll and an actual like a baby doll thing that I actually bought. But there was one of that, and there was like 2 plush dolls, and I was like, this is insane. Her favorite princess is Tiana. She can't even get a costume that looks like it at the Disney store. This is like a Disney product. It was insane. I'm like, maybe they sold out. You know, so I'm a naive, just Lord. But yeah.
So yesterday we went to this pro-police rally.
Oh yeah.
And it was a bishop there who's been involved in Ferguson for quite some time. And there's this video floating around. I hope you all get to see it one day. But so the lady that organized this pro-police rally, her name's Trish. I forget her last name. She's on Facebook. People have done tons of research on her already. She's from Illinois, so she's an outside agitator who came to St. Louis to put together a pro-police rally, right? So the bishop is like, hey, we pay taxes here. We pay taxes here like everyone else. And she said, now this is no respect to the police officers. Her statement was, what, with your welfare check? And she walked away with her chin high and her chest stuck out. And it was almost as if she was like, yeah, I got him there. You know, but my question is, why is it that you have to assume that when he said he paid taxes there, or they, as in the protesters, pay taxes there like everyone else, it has to come from a welfare check? When this is a pro-police rally. The message that sends to me is that it is not about police officers. You're not here because you want to support LEO officers. You're here to counter this black rage that you see.
And it also ignores the fact that white middle-class welfare looks like mortgage support on your taxes. It's not, welfare is not non-existent for white people in middle-class suburbs. It just looks different.
It looks
and it's also more.
And I was just about to say that. I think it's a very unknown statistic. When white people throw that welfare thing in your face, like, oh, we pay for your children to eat food, or, you know, like, we pay for your kids' health insurance. Okay, but you have no knowledge of the fact that a lot of white people are on welfare and government assistance more so than black people. So that jab that you give us because welfare is so closely tied to being poor and black, you can't say that to someone that knows better. You know, you can't say that to someone that can throw that statistic right back at you, but you know what you like to do. You just be like, oh yeah, whatever. Yesterday, I called almost every white person at the pro-police rally a racist. Because I feel like you're not there because you're supporting police officers. You're there to counter black rage. And their rebuttal to me was, well, so are you. And I'm like, okay. All right, that's the only rebuttal you have for me is, so are you. Cool, I'll take that, because you can't look within yourself and recognize what you're putting off to other people and your value of black life.